What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of California Underground. I have with me native Angelino, Los Angeles resident Natalie, who I was like, this debate came up, and I said, there's only one person I think who would really be able to weigh in on this because she's going through it right now. So I said, Natalie, would you like to come on and review this debate? I mean, it's a long debate, so we're only going to get to like 4 subjects out of all of it. But how are you doing today, Natalie?
Good. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, it's a long debate. It about an hour and a half. I sat through all of it so we could save you the nonsense and just kind of filter it out for you guys and what's the most important. So we're gonna hop onto a couple of different subjects, kind of comment on them, and that's basically it. And I will say this, they're all Democrats. So people who are tuning in, there is not one Republican on the stage. It's all Democrats. However, I'll give you my thoughts on why they sound so different. It seems like they're kind of like jockeying for like the middle position, but we can talk about that a little bit
Caruso's
later.
a new Democrat, right? Or a newcomer
He's
to
a
the
he's a
party
newly
officially?
minted Democrat.
Yes.
Yeah, he was independent, or he was Republican, then he went independent, and now he's officially a Democrat. So we'll see. Maybe he's a dino, like I like to call him, like a Democrat in name only, and we'll see that if that's a path that you can run and win. First comment right out of the box, though, I don't know why looking at these two moderators right now, it feels like I'm starting. It's like an SNL skit right off the top. Does that feel like?
Well, Erica Smith is responsible for the blackface of white supremacy. So we do have to. She's the one who wrote that article on Elder. So yes, I appreciate her for that.
Okay. About
her life is like a SNL skit, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it was like the lighting looks like it's like an SNL skit right off the bat, and I don't know.
And the lone woman in the mask back there. I like that people weren't masked.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Just the one.
Yeah, she's got a brand new blue mask on. She's kind of like, I can't believe the rest of you aren't wearing masks right now.
Probably.
So, all right. First topic up. Let's jump right into it. They talk about homeless. So I'll hit play, and whenever you want me to pause, just let me know. Okay. We'll go from there.
Yeah.
Tangible thing that you can actually accomplish as LA mayor when it comes to homelessness. How much is it going to cost? And you have to raise taxes to pay for it.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. The homeless crisis, we have 40,000 people on our streets. I would declare a state of emergency on day one locally, but we also need the state and the federal government involved. I want to build house 15,000 people by the end of the first year, and that's 15,000 above the ones that will be housed that are part already. And we can use a lot of existing money because there is money from the state, there's money from the federal government. We need to expedite the process. We need to have everything expedited. If you're going to build affordable housing on day one, I would appoint a chief. That person would report directly to me. I would access the resources that I have within the federal government and the state government. That housing chief would bring together all of the department heads, and we would make sure that this is the number one problem because it is a public health.
And she would know about federal because she's if you're not watching, the person speaking is Karen Bass, who is the also the lone female on stage. She is a congresswoman right now from California, so she would know a lot about where all the federal money is going in terms of where that's all coming from.
And overall, I was about to say pause, but I appreciate she's really the only one, and I went on their websites too, who kind of even mentions how we would pay for this. I still don't totally trust it, but no one else really specifies, are we raising taxes or where's the money come? But in general, and I know debates are limited on time and all of that, but in my opinion, she really misses the mark on how complex of an issue homelessness is, especially in LA. She seems to think that it's just a bunch of people who can't afford rent and let's just build them some beds and units and the problem solved. And she has more opportunities throughout. I don't know how long we'll get into it, and she really never addresses any other sides of the issue. And I think that's a huge problem.
Health and a public safety emergency, and up until now, it has not been addressed like that.
Councilmember DeLeon, one specific tangible thing you can actually accomplish as LA mayor.
Let me say this, that I'm the youngest child of a single immigrant mother with a third grade education. My mother worked her fingers to the bone, spending the vast majority of her life taking care of the very wealthy. Now, I know what housing insecurity feels like because in my early 20s, I was homeless. Anyone on this stage can make big, bold pronouncements on the issue of homelessness, but there's one major difference. And that difference is that I'm already doing something about it. I built more housing opportunities in Los Angeles for our unhoused neighbors in the past year. I built the largest tiny home village.
I just want to point out that I think he also went to the same school of public speaking that Gavin Newsom, Obama, finger. He likes the finger thing. So that always stood out to me when I see politicians doing this finger thing. I'm like, oh, they all went to the same exact school, or they're just all copying each other.
And I live right by his tiny village. I didn't know that. I live in Highland Park. That's where it is.
Really?
I had no idea. I still don't know where it is, to be honest. I looked into it a little. But yeah.
And the tiny village is like, so explain that. It's like these tiny little, they're kind of like just big porta potties. Like they're just like, you can fit a bed and you can fit like a little bit of running water, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, from what I could tell, and I still have not seen it in person, so I don't really know where it is or how big this village is, but it's in my neighborhood apparently. There's still a lot of homeless people though. I will say that.
Maybe it's so tiny you can't even find it. That's why you can't find it.
Maybe so, yes.
In the United States of America, and I've brought over $700 million in my No Place Like Home to the city of Los Angeles. The bottom line is this, is we can build football stadiums and basketball arenas. We as sure as hell can build housing for our unhoused neighbors. I'm not a talker, I'm a doer on this issue. I'm about action on this issue. And I know that together, LA can come together so we can provide the roofs over their head. Listen, we got $12 billion surplus, about $2 billion are coming to LA. We got No Place Like Home, my money, which is $700 million from the federal government to get down to the city of LA because this is the epicenter of homelessness nationwide.
Russo, one tangible thing as mayor you can actually do.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. The tangible thing we can do is in my plan. And if you go to carusocant.com, it's very well detailed. And we have it posted because it's a very comprehensive plan and concrete.
Pause real quick. I will say his website is very detailed. If anyone wants to look further, his is the most detailed. And I disagree with him on a lot, but I appreciate that. So he's not wrong about that. Because debates only cover so much, obviously.
And this is
that.
And this is the guy that, yeah, I mean, we talked about at the beginning, he flipped from Republican all the way over Democrat. Mm-hmm. He's the big money guy. He's the big landowner. He has luxury apartments and he owns the Grove, I guess.
He gets compared to Trump, but I'm pretty sure he banned Trump from the Grove. So.
Because I'm sure Trump is really upset about that.
Itching to go to the Grove.
Yeah, I'm sure Trump wants to walk around the Grove and go shopping at the Skechers store or something like that. But yeah, he's the guy that I think they're all, I don't know if they're worried about because he's the outsider or because he has the most money, but it seems like there's a lot of people who attacked him specifically in this debate. A lot of people went after him.
And he got more airtime because of that, so because you get to respond for 30 seconds when anyone attacks you. So he kind of stole the show, but
a little bit. And he had some good quips. I thought he was pretty quick on his feet. So he was pretty funny. But we'll keep going.
First year, 44,000 people are living on the streets. They're living in their own waste. It's a terrible situation that we have. We have 14,000 beds already in the city, so that would get everybody a clean, dry bed. Of course, we got to triage and get into a lot of other details. But let me just say this. My grandparents showed up on these shores without any money and without knowing the language. What they did have was something much more important. They had the American dream. They moved to Boyle Heights, and this city, they felt, gave them the opportunity to realize that dream. When you have homelessness, when you have crime, and when you have corruption, You're dampening those dreams. And that's what's happening to the city. That's why I'm in the race, because my interest is to do what's best for the residents of Los Angeles.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Thank you.
Specific tangent.
Yeah, thank you also for having me, and it's great to see Rick Caruso here finally for joining us, Rick. Listen, let's
So the comment, I guess, is that he didn't appear at the last couple debates. So it's like the first one he's appeared at.
Yeah.
Um,
And I guess this
and
is
they
the
go
first
back
one
and
they.
forth.
What's that?
I think that they go back and forth, Buscaino and
Yes.
Caruso. I think
Yes.
there's an Italian feud going on there or something.
I think this is the first debate also they were able to have without being like shut down by protesters or something. So that's good, I guess. But Buscaino,
People are protesting the mayoral race.
well, a lot of homelessness activists are against all of them, even De Leon, apparently. These people in LA, I lived right by Echo Park when they cleaned up Echo Park this time last year. And there were activists out there complaining about it. So there's citizens who just get upset when anyone cleans anything up.
Because everything has to be a win-win. There's never like the best option. It's always has to be a win-win where everybody walks away happy.
let's be honest. What we've done in my district, I plan on doing with the rest of the city. I've saw 40% of the homeless are now housed in my district. And the tangible thing that I can do as mayor is activate the emergency response center because we have an emergency crisis. We're going to be dealing with this crisis 24/7 instead of 9 to 5. And at the same time, we are going to build enough interim beds. My plan is to give the city council within the first 60 days a plan of 9,000 immediate shelter beds, and at the same time move on a no camping law citywide. We have to have both. But let's stop talking about the issue of housing. Okay, it's irresponsible to say homeless issue is only about housing. We have a drug addiction epidemic, dangerous meth. People are not in the right mind frame to say yes to help. And let's focus on a public health and public safety issue facing our streets today, and that's drug addiction and mental health.
Thank you, and we'll talk more about that throughout the night as well.
I think I was attacked.
Well,
It felt like an attack.
The light one.
Well,
It might have been a light one.
that was a light attack, but I guess
The first
his
attack of the
point
night
is, if you want to go there, is that you haven't been to some of these other forums or debates that have been happening, and we appreciate that you're here now. What is your response to that?
Well, listen, Joe, I appreciate the efforts you've been taking on the city council, but the reality is, and I'm sorry, I don't have notes. I didn't realize we were able to bring notes here. But the fact is, since you've been a city councilman, there's 700 more people on the streets in your district alone. So I don't know how you quantify success when the problem has gotten worse under your leadership. So let's just focus on the issues instead of attacking. You got crime problems that we have to deal with. You have corruption in City Hall, and we got homeless problems. I think that's what the people of Los Angeles want to hear us talk.
You will not find one dangerous large encampment in my district today.
Okay, we're going to go to City Attorney Mike Fuhr. 110.
I thought that was I don't know if he actually didn't know you could not bring vote or bring notes to that, or if that was just a thing he said, but I thought that was a good response. I think he kind of already went in and said, like, people want to be attacking it. They want people in Los Angeles want solutions, and you're already attacking. So I don't know where Buscaino's coming off from.
No, he's the one I agreed with most overall in the things he said, even though I'm not thrilled with any of them. But he's very unlikable. I don't think he has a chance. There's nothing about him that's appealing.
Is that Buscaino or Caruso?
Buscaino.
Oh, okay.
I think he has good things to say, kind of, but yeah, don't like him.
He comes off very he's like a robot. He's very like, I don't know, he seems very like and he's like very, I don't know, he doesn't come off as personable at all. He had good answers. You're right, and a lot of people respect that he was a former LAPD officer. But he does come off a little stiff and almost too political in this.
Tangible thing that can actually be accomplished as mayor of Los Angeles on homelessness.
Alex, thank you so much. And I also want to thank your mother for the brownies for everybody.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
Mom made
You should be happy.
Thank you very much.
Right? Very good.
Winning points with me already.
Yes, very good. So I wrote a piece 4 years ago for the LA Times that said if we had a natural disaster, we'd have a FEMA field general here on the ground in charge of recovery. I wrote we have the equivalent of that disaster as homelessness, and there's no one in charge. My first day, that changes, reporting directly to me. Now, my opponents have borrowed from that. Let's go deeper. What does it mean to have an emergency response like as though it were an earthquake? Well, it means having pop-up locations around Los Angeles where you have multiple services available. No more shopping around the whole city for a person experiencing homelessness. And I've done this as city attorney. That's the thing about this race. Experience counts. Other things, I want to change our street engagement strategies. We should be saying to people experiencing homelessness, the streets are dangerous for you. It's no place for you to live. We have a place for you, but there's going to be a choice date after which you can't stay here because our public spaces need to be safe and accessible for everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. City Attorney. Erica, to you.
Yes, actually, I'm going to stick with the issue of homelessness. I know it's a big surprise to everyone, but so all of you on the campaign trail have talked about encampments and the need to get people off the streets and into housing and into shelter. But as we've seen, particularly with some of the more recent cleanups, not everybody is ready to go. So in those instances, do you support, what would you do? And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Caruso, because I believe in an interview with my colleague, Alex, you mentioned that you'd be willing to use police officers to clear encampments. Can you talk a little bit about
using police officers?
I think Caruso and Buscaino are the only ones who are willing to go there and like understand the need for it. It's I mean, I don't even know what the rest of them are saying. You're just going to go around and let them know the streets are dangerous for them. That is not, it's like they don't live in LA. I don't know where they live.
No, I think they're trying to do the like warm and fuzzy, like we'll send out a social worker and that'll work. And they'll just give them a pamphlet. You know, you shouldn't really be here. Meanwhile, like you're talking to this homeless person and they're like, you know, spaghetti Argentina or something. They're like just yelling stuff at you and you're like, okay, so you obviously don't know what's going on.
And I don't know what the answer is.
It's funny, she went right in for Caruso.
Yeah, well, yes. Oh, you can tell throughout the debate she kind of doesn't love him. But yeah, I don't know what the answer is to homelessness, and I don't want to just sit here and point fingers, but I don't know. So many of them missed the mark for me in this debate and even on their sites. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's see how Caruso answers his first kind of poignant question from Erica.
about that?
So thank you for the question. What I said was, I'm confident I can beds by the end of the year. We know we can do it. It's been done in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, and we'll use best practices to get it done. I'm the only one on stage that's a builder that actually knows how to get things built, so I'm confident I can do it. We've got a real problem on the streets. You got drug, you got mental illness that needs to be dealt with, and you've got people that want a second chance, and you have to triage it. You have to get people on the streets that understand mental illness and give them the help they need. You need to get on the streets that help people that are addicted to drugs and give them the help they need. And you need to have training to get people back on their feet. What you can't do is say we're going to allow certain encampments to be in some parts of the city, in some areas, because then you'll never control it. So once you have a dry bed, warm food, you have the medical services that they need, you need to give them an option one time, you need to get an option maybe a second time, but a third time you have to move that encampment because you have to protect the communities that are being impacted by the encampments on the sidewalks.
Congresswoman Bass, I'm going to go to you next. You've talked about this issue some too. As far as using police and law to break up some of these encampments, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me just say, first of all, that I don't believe that you should ever criminalize poverty.
You notice how the question was, she lines it up to accuse Rick Caruso, and she's like, you've said in the past that you want to use police to break up homeless encampments. And then he gives his answer, which is a good answer. And then immediately she goes to Congresswoman Bass and goes, as if to say, can you believe this freaking guy? What do you think about this, huh? Like, give me your thoughts of how you can also attack Rick Caruso and make him look bad. Like, that's such a weird way. She went from like hot to cold really quickly in her question. So
yes, that is the case almost throughout. You can definitely tell. Yeah. Even if I didn't know about the blackface of white supremacy, she has a bias.
Yeah. So you can tell she's, and a lot of these moderators, Alex is pretty good. I feel like he does a lot of these debates. He's usually pretty good. He's right. He's pretty fair to everybody. But her questions are very much like, I'm picking who I like, and I'm gonna help give them layups to attack the people I don't like. So
Yes.
that's very
And
evident
again,
throughout the
no
whole
one's
debate.
talking about criminalizing poverty. That's just such like a catchy, like progressive way of saying things. That's not the whole issue of homelessness. It's not just a bunch of people who can't afford rent and became homeless during COVID and they just really want it. They're really struggling and a lot of them are out of their minds. So it's not just
Yeah.
criminalizing poverty, but overall, she reminds me of just like Kamala Harris. She doesn't really say anything. She kind of says it like sassy a little bit, like it's cute, and it's just no substance. But that's just my opinion, I guess.
Well, there's a lot more, so we can get more into her no substance answers. There's a lot of no substance answers.
Yes.
Do that. The other thing is that people need housing. They need temporary housing immediately. I do think that there are just some things that you don't do on the street, and sleeping is one of them. However, I don't think that you just move people from one neighborhood to another, because if that happens, what that is going to result in is people who are unhoused all being moved into lower income areas, areas that don't have the ability to fight back either legally, and the LAPD is certainly not going to go into those areas. So you use street outreach workers, you work with them, but if somebody is profoundly mentally ill, they need support. So you can give them one time, you can give them 2 times, 3 times, but if they're hearing voices because they're mental, they're not going to respond to that. And I certainly don't think that you arrest them. I do think the police might need to be in the background in case it's a dangerous situation, but I don't think you use the police department to arrest people who are in encampments.
So she wants to, based from what I'm hearing, is she doesn't want to use the police, but she wants the police there.
Just like to
In
intimidate
case
in the
things-
background? Yeah. What are they going to do if things get dangerous? Not arrest them?
I guess. So I guess she's like, I guess she understands that this is a dangerous situation, that maybe sending social workers is not the answer. So we'll send social workers with police officers. So to answer
So you
her
still need police.
question,
Yeah.
so you still need police to break up homeless encampments. So basically that's what she's saying.
Yes.
Councilman Buscaino, I want to go to you as a former LAPD officer. What are your thoughts on police involvement?
5 years ago, I encouraged and tried to compel my colleagues on the city council that you need to have a no camping law that has teeth. Look at our city today, and I was right. We have been a city that has been enabling this behavior. We have been a city that's been a welcoming mat for the rest of the country, is to come to LA, pitch a tent, take drugs in public, and not be held accountable. And my plan, I don't know, Congressmember Bass, you're saying that it's criminalizing poverty. Well, I'm saying, is it criminalizing poverty to connect people to services? Is it criminalizing poverty to make sure our streets and our sidewalks are safe of encampments? Is it criminalizing poverty to allow people to sit in filth, to sit in human waste? That's not compassionate. My plan is go to saferstreets.la, and you'll see the plan. Is when a bed is available in the city of Los Angeles, the sidewalk should not be an option.
Yeah.
Yes.
Congresswoman.
It is not criminalizing poverty. What is criminalizing poverty is, I believe, your plan that says I'm going to give somebody 3 opportunities. And if after the 3rd opportunity they don't take it, then what happens? To me, the only alternative is then they're either going to be physically moved and then they'll just be moved to another neighborhood, or they'll be arrested. My point is that we know that close to 50% of the people who are on the streets are suffering from health conditions. And so for somebody who is mentally ill, I don't believe that that is a solution. They might not be able to respond because of their illness.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm going to go to Councilmember De Leon.
Let me be every one of you that it's neither.
No question for De Leon. I guess that's just an open-ended question on homelessness for De Leon.
You're right. That's
There was like no,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, no question for De Leon. It just hey Kev, you want to throw your 2 cents in here while we're at it?
Well, I
You wanna
guess in
talk about how
general, they're
Caruso's
still on still on the subject of using police. But you're right. Sometimes they give questions specifically, and then a different question to someone else specifically, and then open-ended to another. I don't know.
Yeah, she just kind of left it open for Kevin De Leon, who I guess is the self-proclaimed homeless expert in LA. now. So let's hear his response.
Progressive or humane to let Angelinos live and die on the streets of Los Angeles. Just last week at Toriumi Plaza in Aberu, Tokyo, we housed 108 individuals. Now, of course, we had so-called activists trying to obstruct us from moving these folks from squalor over the head to have a shower, their own toilet, their own bathroom, a warm bed, clean clothes, as well as clean sheets and towels, and more importantly, especially for women, a locked door. There is a major difference, as I just mentioned a few moments ago. And that difference is I'm actually doing something about it already. Not waiting for a fancy title of mayor or my name up on the door to do something about it. Like I just said a few moments ago, I've housed more individuals than anyone has in the entire city of Los Angeles in the past year. I have built the largest tiny home village, not in LA, but the entire United States of America. 9 times out of 10, unhoused individuals, they'll take the housing immediately. We have to supply the inventory to make sure we can move them from the streets into housing.
Hold
so
on,
tiny.
Paz. I don't believe that 9 times out of 10 they'll take it. I tried to look that up, but I have no way of corroborating that, but that just doesn't sound right to me. Also, I can't take seriously anyone who says unhoused. I'm sorry. I know that's petty, but that's so LA to be like, let's change the language, but not do anything about it, basically. Like they're so offended that we call them homeless when they have no home.
Yeah. You are without home. You would be homeless.
Yes. But unhoused is nicer. I don't know.
And then if someone is unhoused and they are with child, they are a pregnant person.
Yes.
They are unhoused pregnant people. So
Mhm.
as opposed to homeless pregnant women. But yeah, him and his tiny village again that you can't seem to find. You live there, so you can't even find where his tiny village. It's making me think of Zoolander, where he's like, is this a tiny village for ants? Like, it's so small you can't even find it.
Well, first, I want to say what I said at the beginning, which is we've had some success in the city offering a choice date for people experiencing homelessness. We say we have a place for you to go. There's a date after which you cannot stay here. And that strategy typically has worked. Occasionally it doesn't. When it doesn't, in my view, we should be having a triage location elsewhere in Los Angeles with congregate shelter and basic services, and the person is moved there. But before I go on, Mr. Caruso, you indicated you're a builder. And I respect that, but I have to say, you haven't done much in the way of building homeless and affordable housing for all the opportunities you've had. Instead, you've opposed rent control. And at the same time you were building luxury housing and opposing rent control, I was standing up for tenants being illegally evicted and making sure that we were combating slum housing and working to improve and expand affordable housing. Those are stark differences. Campaigns are about comparisons. Voters are entitled to know. So that issue of the building thing, that's a great thing to say. It's a great commercial, but action speaks louder than commercials.
So this is one of those things, and I don't know what beef he has with this guy. I can never pronounce this. Mike Fiora.
Mhm.
They've had some beef or something because they went back and forth this entire debate. And the first thing I think of, and maybe it's just the disgusting free market capitalist in me, says, why would he build homeless shelters? His business is building the Grove, luxury apartments. That's what his business does. Why would he go out of his way to build homeless shelters, which is a whole different thing, mind you? You have to get government approvals and permits, and I'm sure there's all these hoops, and you have to get
Right.
specialists, and you have to get the right people to administer it. It's like, it's not just throwing up luxury apartments. It's a whole different thing. And the
Mhm.
profit margin on it is probably nothing because you're not making money off homeless people. You'd have to get a contract with the city to buy it or to build that. So his kind of this point of like, why haven't you built homeless shelters if you're a builder? I don't know, probably because he's been a private businessman up until right now, and that wasn't in his business's best interest to build a homeless shelter. So why he's
Right.
it's a lame attack in my opinion.
It is. It's a oversimplification, which I guess, I don't know, leftists are want to do, like, well, this is so simple and just do this. And I don't know anything about building, but Caruso, and again, he's not like my favorite in this, but he brings up how it's really difficult to build in LA and there's a lot of red tape, and that's a problem. And I don't know whether that's true or not, but it seems like it might be true. And so that's also a valid, maybe reason or concern or whatever.
Yeah,
it's
there's
just
a lot
not so
more to it.
simple.
Yeah. It's not like he's just, it's as easy to build a homeless shelter as it is. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's easier to build a homeless shelter than luxury apartments, but I feel like it's probably easier to build luxury apartments in LA if you can do it and you're good at it, because people will pay in LA for luxury apartments. So rather than homeless shelters, which he's not going to make a profit on anyway. But let's hear his response.
Mr. Caruso, do you want to respond?
Well, I do know how to build, and I've been on the other side of the counter when I've tried to pull permits, and the city is so overregulated, there's no surprise why we don't have enough housing. But if you want to just talk about facts and problems in the city, Mike, I'm sorry that you opened the store. Your office was raided by federal agents. Your office is under investigation, and you've got a senior person in your office that's accusing you of perjury. And you're standing here criticizing me for building one of the most recognizable and admired companies in Los Angeles, if not the country. And I just don't think that's the right thing to do. Let's focus on issues.
Yeah, go ahead.
Rick, I'm very glad you brought that up, because
I'm sure you are.
Building,
I'm sure you are.
I am, because it highlights a stark difference between us. In my office, out of 340,000 cases that I'm responsible for and 2,000 laws that I've written, about 1,000 people in the course of my tenure I oversee, there was one instance where we uncovered violations. We made that information public. I hired an ethics expert. I published a report, and then I issued a series of reforms. Okay. In contrast to your leadership here, which has been
Thank you, City Attorney,
as opposed to make transparent.
Yeah. Thank you. We're gonna move on to the next question.
Move on to the issue. There we go. of crime, another big issue for a lot of people.
Is that a big issue in LA? Crime? Is it bad?
It is. Yeah.
No. Okay. I hadn't heard. I didn't know crime was bad in LA.
With 1 being totally not safe at all, and 10 being really safe, really comfortable. How safe do you feel walking on the streets? And if you don't feel safe, what's something specific that you want to see different as mayor?
Listen, I would say a 7, but that's all relative to every Angelino, depending on their zip code and the color of their skin.
I'm sorry, Paz. I hate this.
Okay, we both. You go first.
Well, overall, it's just my own opinion, but he's so annoying to me, and so I don't know, just so serious and such a sob story. But I would say more than anything, it's dependent on your sex too. And I don't think it's relative to where you live, your zip code, because you're traveling. LA people drive. I just don't see the point of making this all about skin color, and homelessness and crime is an issue in Los Angeles, no matter what your color is and your income level and all of that. So let's just deal with the problem.
I think the way he says it comes off as, and I know he's trying to pander to, he's trying to pander on skin color and to minorities, when in reality, I think that's just it's almost insulting the way he says it, because it's like, just because you may be black or Hispanic and you're walking through a neighborhood, you could still be scared or not feel safe in your neighborhood. Like, that has nothing to, is he trying to say like, well, if you're Hispanic and you're walking through a certain neighborhood, you're going to feel less, or you're going to feel more secure? Because I'm trying to figure out, like, just because your skin color, you're in a certain neighborhood, you should feel safer, or I don't know. It comes off to me like, I guess those minorities don't feel as scared because it's their communities. Like,
I took it the opposite way. That's interesting. But they feel more scared because of police, ostensibly, or because there's more crime. But regardless, I just don't think it's as I just don't see the point of separating it by skin color if you're running for LA mayor.
Yeah, I mean, if a neighborhood's dangerous, it shouldn't matter what skin color you are. It's a dangerous neighborhood. Like,
Yeah.
if you go through a bad neighborhood, it's a bad neighborhood. Like, I don't know. It shouldn't be like. I guess he's assuming like, or maybe he's trying to say, oh, if you're white in the wrong neighborhood, then you're gonna feel really scared because you're white and you're very fragile and you're very scared. But I mean, is it a bad neighborhood or is it just?
And when we're seeing these blatant smash and grabs and just in broad daylight, it has nothing to do almost with the neighborhood, which is sad. It's gotten so egregious that it happens all over.
Yeah. Yeah, his response right off the bat was like, "Oh, this one's bad."
Fair share of violence. So I know what fear feels like. I think anyone can stand on this stage and ask for thousands of more police officers. And I think everyone on the stage has asked for an increase in the budget. But what they're not telling you is that if you increase the police budget to the numbers that they want, that's going to cost $1 billion over a course of 5 years. That doesn't include pensions or healthcare, nor does it include the badge or even the squad car. Before we get into increasing our police budget, we need to utilize our resources in a much more effective manner. We need to hire mental health specialists to get our LAPD officers off the mental health front lines and back on the line of duty to protect and serve. Every person deserves to be treated with professionalism, respect, and dignity. We can better utilize our resources strategically in hot spots where we have crime trends and keep all Angelinos safe.
And we'll get more into the specific issue of number of cops in our next round. But City Attorney Fuhr, to you, if you had to do 1 to 10, 1 being not safe, 10 being really safe, how safe do you feel in Los Angeles, and what can be done on that issue of crime?
So I personally typically feel safe. But I know, because I'm going to every one of LA's 101 neighborhoods, the only American ever to do that people are on edge everywhere in the city, from San Pedro to North Hollywood.
This is an interesting question. I just thought of it because the way as a politician to tiptoe around this is it's difficult. Because on one hand, you want to say, oh, I feel safe in LA because LA is such a great city. But on the other hand, you don't want to say you feel too safe because then you seem out of touch, because normal Los Angeles are like, yeah, it's not safe. I don't know where you've been. I don't know what ivory tower you're living in or what rich neighborhood you live in. It's not safe in LA. So I think it's a tricky question for them to answer of like, they don't want to make it sound so bad of like LA's like is a war zone and it's really bad out there, but they also don't want to. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, especially everyone
but
Caruso. Caruso is the only one not currently holding public office. So if you're holding public office and you say, "Oh yeah, I felt super unsafe," it sort of reflects badly on you and your work and your city.
especially as city attorney, like your job is to prosecute misdemeanors, and you're like, I don't feel safe at all. This is horrible.
And I don't think any of the answers were genuine. They all, I think, without exception, said I feel safe. And I don't know. I can't judge that. But I don't believe that you feel safe at all hours in any part of the city. I think that's BS, even for the men on the stage. So,
yeah.
And how do we address that? We don't have this zero-sum game of either more police or reform, because we need to do both. I propose an increase in 500 officers to 10,000 and a series of reforms to make sure that our offices are embedded in communities that are distrustful of police for 5-year stints, to make sure that we sever from police officers' obligations interventions with mental health issues on the street that aren't violent, to be sure we have civilian ambassadors in our police stations, and to be sure that we de-escalate violence through training of our officers. And one more thing, Alex, we can't ask LAPD to do it alone. We need to complement that with neighborhood-based violence prevention intervention programs and cleaning up our communities. Just cleaning up a neighborhood has been shown can decrease gun violence by 29%. These are all parts of a comprehensive, sustainable vision of safety.
Mr. Buscaino, as a former cop, how safe do you feel walking the street?
Generally, I feel safe, but I'm not hearing that with my own family.
Also, probably as a former police officer, he probably already has a fast track to a CCW, which I'm sure he likely carries. So I'm sure he feels real safe. As if everyone could probably carry in LA, that might be.
Yes, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but again, going on their websites, so many of these people, De Leon is very against pro red flag laws, against the NRA, crack down on 80% rifles, which are, in his opinion, weapons of mass destruction or weapons of war, excuse me. That's Caruso's website, actually. So Caruso and De Leon both have things on their website about how we need to crack down on guns, not necessarily just illegally acquired guns, which is interesting because they're talking about combating crime and making the average Angelino feel safer. So just something to research on your own, everybody, I guess, if you're really interested in making an informed decision.
Kevin De Leon is one of his quote keeps popping up from different organizations. When I think he was assemblyman, he was talking about how he was describing an AR-15, and he was talking about that there is, I think this is the correct quote, someone would have to correct me, but it's something about there's a special button on the side of the AR-15 that basically allows it to become fully automatic, which is not true at all. Like, you can't just push a button on an AR-15 and make it fully automatic. And then he said it shoots out something like 300 rounds. And it's like, he got so much wrong about the gun he's trying to legislate out of existence. And you look at this stuff and you go, these are the people who make the law, the gun control laws. They don't know anything about.
He proudly says on his website that he wrote the strongest package of gun control laws in California history. And again, like, I'm just learning about guns. I've never shot a long gun, but I'll just remind everyone that, like, criminals don't abide by gun legislation because they're criminals. So this is just for the average Angelino. Again, it's very difficult to get a CCW here. The average single woman walking alone in Los Angeles. That's the only people this affects, not the criminals. So keep that in mind when you're voting, I guess. I don't know.
Family members, with my friends. Today, you see mayhem and chaos in the city of Los Angeles. We haven't seen these homicide numbers in a 15-year period. Everything hinges on public safety. I voted against defunding LAPD. And let me say this.
Made some news there.
And the reason why I voted against it, because I expect to see, and I told my colleagues this, when we take resources away from LAPD, expect to see a spike in crime. In fact, one of my first actions as mayor is going to be to refund the LAPD $150 million. And I'm hearing from residents all across the city. I hear from Sam, Des, Stephen, and Los Feliz. They are afraid because they were dealing with a dangerous encampment with a known local gang taking over their streets. I've heard from the Melrose Avenue businesses where it was the epicenter of the smash and grabs. Then you have a out-of-touch district attorney who's not prosecuting crimes.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about him a little bit later, too. But let's get to Mr. Caruso now. How safe do you feel walking the streets of L.A., and what's the most important thing that can be done in terms of safety?
I think we all agree we have a problem in the city with crime. Homicides are up 50% since 2019. Vehicle thefts are up 50% since 2019. Shootings are up almost 50% since 2019. Here's the difference between everybody on the stage and me. I inherited a mess. After Rodney King beating, I was asked to be the president of the police commission. I inherited a department, I reformed it. It was under a federal consent decree, got it removed by reforming the department. I changed leadership, went out for the best and the brightest, brought in Bill Bratton. We reversed the course of LAPD. And then what did I do next? I hired 800 officers. And then what did we do next? Community policing, senior lead officers. Officers were on the street. They knew the neighbors. They knew the storekeepers. There was trust. You have to have trust. And then what happened? 30% reduction of crime. I've done it before. I'll do it again because I know how to do it.
Congresswoman, do you feel safe walking in?
I do feel safe. I would say a 10. I feel safe, but I feel
really safe with my Secret Service and my bodyguards and my bulletproof SUV that I ride in as a federal congresswoman, I feel great. I don't
10
know
out of
what people
10.
are talking about. 10 out of 10. Don't understand what people are talking about. I am befuddled that people don't feel safe in LA. Excellent answer. Makes you really seem like you're in touch with normal Angelinos.
You understand that a lot of people around the city do not feel safe, and I respect that, and we have to address that. And when there is a spike in crime, we have to hold people accountable. On the other hand, I want to address the crimes of today, but I want to prevent the crimes of the future. And we can do that by investing in communities. In 1990, at the height of the crack cocaine epidemic and gang violence, we had 1,000 homicides in South LA at the time. I went to that crisis. I went right in the middle of South Central. I started an organization to figure out, how do you organize the community to address crime? How do you prevent crime? And some of the projects and programs that we came up with years later have been replicated, they've been research-based, and so while I want to suppress the crime of today, I want to very seriously invest in prevention in the future. And in my office, I want to have an office of community safety so we can prevent the crimes of the future and make the investments in communities that will do that.
Thank you, Congressman. Of course, she's referencing the Community Coalition in South.
Yes, I am.
Eric.
Isn't that the premise of Minority Report, is that you arrested people based on future crimes? Was that? Am I? I don't know. I feel like there's a movie based on.
Yeah. And that's the part where she really reminded me. Oh, go ahead.
No, you finish. You go ahead.
No, I just heard prevent the crimes of the future. She said it like 4 times. It's like, we get it. Okay, what are you saying though? That's the part where I was like, okay, Kamala, you're just saying words and repeating them.
Like the passage of time.
Yes.
And time is passing. And the passage of time.
Yeah.
And Ukraine is a small country, and Russia is a very big country.
Yes, so sticking with policing and public safety, some of you just mentioned about increasing the size of the Los Angeles Police Department. I wanted to dig a little bit into that, specifically the numbers that have been cited. City Attorney Farrer, you mentioned that you want to take the force to around 10,000. Is there a reason why that particular number makes sense?
Yeah, so at 10,000, the city was experiencing a good level of safety. The numbers have been declining. As a consequence, the police don't have the resources to respond to hotspots the way they should. As I go around the community, response times in general are way down. That needs to change. And again, I think we need to be looking at expanding the police force and at the same time reforming it. We could be doing both things. In communities throughout the city, I'm hearing we want candidates not to the left, to the right, but right in that heart of where common ground is. And that's common ground territory. As I mentioned, the police department can't do it all by itself. I began to delineate other elements of my public safety plan, including cleaning up communities, having teams that respond comprehensively across departmental lines when a park isn't safe, for example, neighborhood after-school programs, job training programs. These are all elements of what it means to be a safe city. And I want our police force to be diverse, and I want to have more college graduates in it, which tends to de-escalate issues of violence.
Thank you, City Attorney. And to you, Mr. Caruso, you also want to increase the size of the force, but to a larger size. What is behind that number, and how would you propose paying for such a massive expansion of the city payroll?
So right now we have some.
As a, again, very poignant question from Erica to Rick Caruso. You want to really increase it to a large, she doesn't say the number. She just says you want to increase it to a very large number. It's going to cost a lot of money. How do you plan on doing that? So just another observation.
Yeah, you're right. But he wants to increase it by around 1,500, according to his website.
How much was it? You cut out for a second.
By 1,500 police.
Oh, okay.
Some of the worst crime we've had in the history of Los Angeles, and at the same time, we have some of the worst, most violent crime. We're 500 officers short, thanks to our career politicians, right? So you're going in different directions, and the arrest rate is down 25%, which means officers are not engaging. You have to change morale, you have to do the reforms, you have to re-engage the community. City of Los Angeles has a budget of $11 billion. I guarantee you, I'm used to managing budgets. I'm an executive, I'm a manager. That's the difference between me and other people that are running for office. The money is there to support the additional officers. And I also stand with our president, Joe Biden, who said, let's fund
Ugh.
the police. There will be adequate funding coming out of the federal government, adequate funding coming out of the state government. There are more resources in terms of funds in the United States today than any time in history.
Except for the rising inflation and the amount of money that we have to print because we don't have money and we're 30 trillion or so dollars in debt. But yeah, we have more resources than we know what
Yeah.
to do with. Just
And that's
throw
the
more
biggest
money around.
thing. I don't understand how any of these people are going to pay for any of this stuff. And I just don't trust any of them.
I mean, that's usually a good idea. Don't trust any of these people on the stage. Never trust any politicians, really.
Yeah.
But you can't put a dollar value on saving a life. I'm talking to families at St. Lawrence down in Watts. They're scared to have their kids go outside. That's just not right.
Thank you. Councilman De Leon, you just talked about increasing the size, not increasing the size of the force, but talking about mental health workers. How would that work? What some of the other candidates have proposed?
Let me say, to quote President Joe Biden, that's a bunch of malarkey. A bunch of malarkey. Let's be very clear about that. Because if you're going to increase the budget for the LAPD, what they're not telling you is you have to raise taxes $1 billion over the course of 5 years. Let me underscore. That does not include pensions or health care, your badge, your weapon, your uniform, your belt, not even a squad car.
Why is he standing like that?
That's $2 billion over the course of 10 years. So you either have to raise taxes on everyday Angelenos who have suffered greatly from the coronavirus pandemic, or you're going to have to cut to the bone when we talk about needed services for Angelenos, such as Meals on Wheels for senior citizens, after-school programs for children, as well as parks for every Angeleno. That's the bottom line. You can't have it both ways. And I think what we need to do is we need to better utilize the resources that we have. We're budgeted for 9,706 officers. Through attrition, retirement, we can restore that budget, or we can restore those officers today.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. I appreciate that he brings up the cost and raising taxes to do it. That's probably honest. But also, I don't think the average Angeleno cares about parks for every Angeleno and after-school programs above crime. I think that's his own political feeling and agenda, and it's just not very in touch with. And the reality might be we can't afford it or whatever it is. I don't know the answer. It's not my job, but also that's just not like number one on the list, Meals on Wheels.
Yeah, it's. I think I hinted at this before that it's interesting listening to these candidates because they all sound like 2 years ago. This sounds like stuff Republicans were saying. You know, and a lot of it is like, if you were in 2020, if you could look into the future and see that the LA mayoral race would be talking about things like, how do we clean up the homeless? How do we increase funding for the police? How do we hire more police? How do we stop crime? Kevin De Leon saying, oh, we can't raise taxes. God forbid we don't want to raise taxes. You'd be like, that's like the world way the LA mayoral race is going to have people talking like this, but that's what they're talking like. And it seems like that's the general feeling of all the candidates. And maybe that's what the polling says, is talk about this stuff and talk about it in a moderate way. I read an article about how this could be a lot of Angelenos sort of envious of Orange County, and they kind of want more of that Orange County stability and safety, and they want some of that like common sense coming up to Los Angeles. So it's definitely interesting to see, because you listen to these politicians and you're like, that's not the party line from 2 years ago.
Well, it's polling. Some of them have other issues on their sites, but some of them only have these two issues: homelessness and crime. All of them touch on that, and some of them, that's all they talk about on their sites. So they know we're concerned about homelessness and crime. I don't know if they are, but they know we are.
Yeah, so that's what they're pandering to. And I'm sure that the moderators know that too. I'm sure they looked at the polling and saw what was important and made the questions.
Yeah.
And and this girl with her mask on, still sitting there, looking at everybody. I want to jump ahead a little bit because I want to get to your favorite topic, COVID, because they jump back in to talk about COVID. So let's hop ahead to their talk about COVID and see how they respond or what they're, because I think they're different. They have different answers, and it's definitely more marketed than up until this point. It was basically they're all kind of like on the same page of like, we need to clean up homelessness, and yeah, we need to increase crime or police so that we can fight crime. But COVID seems a little bit, they're all a little bit more different. So
All right, there's some news. Okay, now let's see if we can make some news on the issue of COVID.
Yes, let's talk briefly about COVID. So obviously, LA is coming out of the worst of the pandemic. Businesses have reopened. We've gotten rid of our mask mandates. We're able to talk. But we've seen cases spiking in other parts of the world, in Europe and Asia, and there's some concern that there could be a surge here. And there's still vulnerability here in LA, given the disparities in vaccination and hospitalization rates. So if we do see another surge, would you support a return to more stricter rules? And I'm going to just go right to left. So, Attorney Fear.
Thank you very much, Erica. So the answer is, if we see a surge, we're going to have to listen to the public health experts' advice, which I've been doing throughout this whole process. I'm very proud there's been no public law office in the nation as impactful as ours in going after price gouging and fake test kits and cures and preventions and defending the city's vaccination mandate, which I strongly supported in the teeth of the pandemic. If the health experts say we need to go back to tougher restrictions, we will do it if that means avoiding shutting down our economy and closing our schools and requiring masks on kids, because we need to...
But pause. I can't take anybody seriously on this stage who says we might have to go back to restrictions if the public health experts say so, and then claim to care about housing affordability, unemployment, homelessness, anything. You don't care about that at all. You don't care about equity. You don't care about equality, because going back to restrictions affects all of those things. And who are the public health experts other than Barbara Frere? For every public health expert, we all know, obviously your audience knows, who says we need to go back to restrictions. There's another one who says, no, we don't. And LA was in restrictions longer than anybody. And he is now claiming that we might have to go back to restrictions in order to avoid shutting down our economy and avoid putting masks on children's and shutting down schools. We did all those things longer than anybody else. And we still had more restrictions than anybody else. So it doesn't work. And this is, for me, I'm biased. This is like a single deal breaker issue for me. I can't support any candidate who doesn't say, and I don't know how much say the mayor has in this, honestly, standing up to the governor, but you don't care about any of this stuff because you're making all of those problems you just mentioned worse by shutting down businesses and imposing vax mandates.
well said.
Prevent the worst from happening. If we've learned nothing,
I can see. It's funny. I'm watching you. Like they're talking about COVID. I can feel like you're. That's why I wanted to make sure we got to this topic, because I was like, I know she's going to want to talk about COVID.
Because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for COVID. I would not have become a conservative or a Republican or whatever I am if it were not for COVID. This is a huge, huge thing in the country and especially in Los Angeles. And it's changing people's lives. And it changed mine.
So here we are.
Yes.
This pandemic, there was a discussion in the LA Times about the fact that there was confusion in City Hall about who was in charge. We have to be training people now for the next pandemic as though we were training for an earthquake or other disaster. We have to be assuring that there are concrete rules that are clear for our businesses. I did town halls with small businesses, uncertain what the rules were. They need clarity and certainty. These are all lessons we've learned from the pandemic, and as mayor, I'm going to put those lessons in place.
Thank you, Mr. Russo.
Is the question a mandate, or is that what, I'm sorry?
Would you, if there is a surge, would you support returning to stricter restrictions, both for businesses and schools? And
Fair enough. Thank you for clarifying that. I have a company that was in the middle of the bullseye in the pandemic. Everything I owned was shut day one. No view, no visibility to how long we were going to be shut. We had hundreds of employees, hundreds of retailers, hundreds of tenants, hundreds of restaurants. What did we do? We made sure that everybody got over the bridge together. We did not lose one small business on our property. It was a shared responsibility. That's the way I look at COVID, a shared responsibility. If the health experts say we need to have more restrictions, we should. You need to follow the advice of the experts. But I think government has two critical jobs. One is to protect people's lives. The second is to protect your livelihood. I think we did a very poor job in this county protecting livelihoods. 90% of the businesses in LA City are small businesses. When you made them close, you took the ability of people to make money to put food on the table or pay their rent. We have to be very careful on how we
Okay,
decide
hold on, pause.
to respond.
He's not wrong about, well, first of all, I don't think it's the government's job to protect your livelihood. I don't think that's the government's job. You should step out of the way if you want to protect people's livelihoods. But that's what I've been saying since the beginning, is that livelihoods are lives. You can't separate the two in our modern day society, because you can't survive without it. But, and I know a debate is limited in what you can say, but he doesn't go into specifics. He just says, trust the health experts, just like throwing that out to appease that side of things, but doesn't go into specifics of how do you protect livelihoods if you're trusting the health experts, which we've proven in Los Angeles are idiots. Sorry. And it's not on his site either. And really no one other than Farrer has anything on their site about COVID. And I understand homelessness and crime are the two, or Gascon, I guess, was the second major issue when they were polled, but that ties into crime. But I would say COVID is like a very close third for Angelenos, because we've been hit so hard. And I think you need to talk about what you would do if, and in fact, in my opinion, when Fauci and Newsom and everybody else says there's another surge and we have to shut down again. I think that is important for this race. And none of them are doing that, in my opinion, other than maybe one, which we'll get to in a sec, I guess.
Yeah, it's the one thing that it's contradictory to say I would trust the health experts, and if they say we have to do these things, I would do them. But also, I want to protect people's livelihoods, which we saw from the past 2 years. The health experts don't really care about livelihoods, and especially in LA County or in LA, they did not care about livelihoods. So I wouldn't put all my faith in the health experts. If they say jump, you don't say how high, you say, okay, that's your opinion. Now I have to take it into consideration in the real world. That would be a better answer, to say I'll listen to them, but it doesn't mean I'm going to just follow them blindly, which they all seem to feel like they can't. It's almost like blasphemy to like, or heresy to say I would listen to them, but I would take it into consideration. Like, you can't question the experts when it comes to the left. They're like, you can't question it.
Yeah, they're all afraid to say it. Yeah. I mean, maybe they really wouldn't question, but they all feel like they have to say that. Oh, we have to follow the public health experts. Well,
yeah,
we did, and here we
you
are.
don't always have to.
Yeah, exactly.
You can take their opinion, but it doesn't mean you have to follow it to a T. So
On to the pandemic.
Thank you. Congresswoman.
So when the crisis hit, I was chairing the Congressional Black Caucus. And one thing I've done in my life is build coalitions and collaborations. So I pulled together the Black Caucus, Latino, Asian Pacific Islander, Native American Caucus, and we fought for and won billions of dollars to deal with the disproportionate way COVID was impacting our communities. And we sent millions of dollars to Los Angeles, hundreds of millions, as a matter of fact. LA would have been in a fiscal crisis without that money. And that money also paid for some of the tiny homes, home key, room key, etc. I would follow the science, first of all. But I do
follow
think
the science.
If we continue now to really focus on vaccinations in communities where it's disproportionately low, the next time we have a variant, and by the way, we do have a variant right now. It's a question as to how big it's going to be. The next time, it will not impact folks the same way, and so we probably won't have to do it. Now, in Congress, I also focus on foreign affairs, so we are focusing on getting millions of vaccines around the world. Until the world is vaccinated, we're going to continue to have variants.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're separating all of my feelings about the vaccine. I cannot vote for someone who cannot follow science and actually read. This woman acts like she hasn't watched CNN lately, doesn't know that the vaccine doesn't stop transmission, especially for Omicron or seemingly any new variant. It gets weaker and weaker against transmission. I just, even if I loved the vaccine, had taken it, believed everyone should take it, I don't trust you if you cannot just pick up a newspaper or like log online. That she's crazy. In my notes, I just wrote, she's an idiot. I mean, she's like, from May of 2020, of talking about disproportionately impacted communities. We were all impacted in LA and in California. It had nothing to do with your skin color. That's part of the problem here, is that we're focusing on that. And there's nobody in Los Angeles who cannot access a freaking vaccine if they want it. So acting like it's, oh, disproportionate communities don't have the vaccine, like that's our problem and you just need to educate them. That's racist on both sides. And it's absurd. Some people don't want the vaccine. So what are you going to do about it? And there is no science behind this is why we have new variants, because people aren't vaccinated. I can't take this woman seriously. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
When she says, oh, well, we'll continue to have variants until everyone's vaccinated, isn't the reason we have variants because everyone gets vaccinated and then the virus is mutating and creating more variants, and it's also going to create more variants regardless. So it's
it's impossible. We can't vaccinate everyone at the same time unless we're talking about forcibly doing it. And obviously that would pertain to the entire world. We did not forcibly vaccinate the entire world at exactly the same time. So here we are, and COVID's never going away. And you're running for mayor of Los Angeles. So stop talking about vaccinating the world. Like, you're a moron. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and her whole little tirade about, oh, I brought hundreds of millions back. The first thing I thought was, boy, she brought the pork home. That's for sure. Like, she made sure hundreds of millions, flooded into the LA city coffers. And so great. It's good to know that you brought the pork home. Thanks for letting us know.
The story of COVID-19 in Los Angeles is a tale of two cities. In one, LA, the poor got poorer and the middle class got smaller. And the other, LA, the rich actually got richer. Expendable essential workers treated like expendable workers, frontline workers relegated to the back of the line for life-saving vaccinations and PPE equipment. I'm not waiting to lead on this issue because I've already introduced legislation that will create a public health department for the city of Los Angeles. And I'll also invest historic amount of dollars so we can educate every Angelino in every language to make sure they are prepared for the next global pandemic and variant, because it is going to happen. Let me underscore and emphasize the following. My district, at the height of the pandemic, was ground zero, where we had the highest infection as well as mortality rate. Families were devastated. There will be another pandemic, be rest assured, but we have to be prepared for it. And that's why I'm going to create a public health department so we can cut through all the bureaucratic BS at the county and state level and make sure we get the federal dollars directly to the city.
Isn't there already a public health department of LA City, or is there no public health department?
Well, there's one for the county. And so their issue, and I don't know whether they're right or wrong on this. I don't understand whether it would be a good thing or bad thing for people who are of our way of thinking. But we share the department with like 70 other cities. And we're so big that they argue we would need our own. And I think, in fact, Bass says at the end, she gets asked a specific question about it towards her for some reason. And she says she's not opposed to it, but it would take like 10 years to make. I don't know whether that's true or not. But most of the candidates on the stage support trying to make one ASAP for just the city. Yeah.
More bureaucracy.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilman.
Well, first, I'm proud of what we've done in my district in response to COVID-19. Look at us. We're together again. We don't have masks on. This emergency is over. Enough with these emergency orders. In fact, the last 3 months in the city of Los Angeles, in front of council, I voted against continuing the emergency orders. Look, we know what to do. We know what not to do. Vaccines are universal access to vaccines today. We also have universal access to testing. Look at our traffic. We're back at work. One of my first things.
I don't know if that's a good thing to brag about, but
after Alex, we refund the LAPD $150 million. I'm going to end the employee vaccine mandates. We are losing our police officers and firefighters to neighboring agencies. And at the same time, we're seeing a spike in fires and a spike in crime. We have to end the employee vaccine mandate in the city of Los Angeles.
Okay, I'll try to get you in on that later.
Hold on, pause. Karen Bass is shaking her head, and they never get back to it, and I'm disappointed on that. But she clearly is for the vaccine mandate, which is ironic because on her website she says she wants to add more forces to the police force. but that's sort of difficult to do because you're making it more difficult to become a cop right now. And the reality is all these people have to deal with, they talk about diversity of Los Angeles. Part of it is some people do not want or cannot take the vaccine. So how are you going to deal with that? Not with vaccine mandates.
I just like to point out, girl in mask. She's riled up about that last answer. She's talking to her friend. She's like, "Can you believe he wants to get rid of the employee mask mandate?" And the girl, she probably doesn't even know this girl. This girl's just like, okay, I can't hear you through the mask. Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.
I'm going to ask a different kind of question now, because not only are people here trying to understand your policies, I think people are trying to get a grasp on who you are, because this is such an important job, and a lot of it is trying to understand your character and your values. So, Mr. Caruso, I want to start with you. Name a member of your family that shaped your values.
Okay, that was it for the COVID.
Yeah.
All right. I wanted to wrap up because I want to get your input as an Angelino. There's a lot more. If you want to subject yourself, anyone who's listening, you can go find this. They have a whole bunch of videos of it. If you want to subject yourself to the whole hour and a half, I would highly recommend it. If you live in Los Angeles, definitely tune into this. But these were sort of the highlights of this whole debate. What was your takeaway? And is there anybody as an Angelino who kind of stands out to you specifically that you'd be like, I would support that person for the next mayor?
My takeaway is that I really need to move. Watching this, none of it was really gave me a lot of a heart. And I hate to be that cynical. I mean, just the fact that they're all Democrats, which I guess is to be expected. And again, I'm biased because COVID is like a deal breaker issue for me. And I thought they were all lacking on that. Buscaino is the only one who sort of, speaks to me in any way. I think his answers are clear and make sense to me, and he's not afraid to say it, but I don't think he has a chance at all, and I wouldn't necessarily be thrilled with him. I don't know. I just, I think this is more of the same BS, and I hate to end it on that note because that's so not helpful, and I want people to go out and vote and all that, but just watching this, I don't see how anything's going to change in LA. And I know a debate is limited, like I said, but I did do my due diligence and go to their websites. And again, I wasn't thrilled. So I'm not really sure.
So moral of the story to anyone watching or listening, if you live in Los Angeles, get out now. That's the moral of the story. It's not going to get better. Yeah, I thought it was surprising how, like I said before, I was surprised at how moderate they all came off. Like, as I was listening to it, I expected a lot, especially LA, which is a fairly, I would say, fairly woke city. It's not San Francisco by any means, but even San Francisco, I think, is starting to get fed up with a lot of the woke stuff, and they want common sense kitchen table politics back in their cities. They want safe streets, and they want to be able to go to the park with their kids and their dogs and whatever, or their therapy lizards or whatever they go to the park with in San Francisco. And they just want to live normal lives. And it was definitely interesting to me to watch this whole thing and see how moderate they all came off. And again, I don't know if they get elected. I would say maybe out of all of them, I could imagine Caruso and Buscaino staying moderate, especially since Caruso was a Republican at one point. Buscaino seems like a pretty blue dog Democrat. He's a former police officer. I wouldn't trust Karen Bass or Kevin De Leon to not just go far left the minute they get into office and just be complete woke politicians. Mike Fiore, I don't think he'd be very effective at all, so I'm not even worried about him. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. And I think, oh wait, there was another guy. There's a guy over here. He's wearing a mask too. A brand new blue mask. He's wearing a fresh blue mask.
I just realized that the girl might be a guy too, because in this screenshot, she kind of looks like a guy.
It does kind of. It looks like a surfer bro.
So who knows?
Could be a surfer bro.
Yeah.
Showing up like, dude, I want to check out the mayoral debate. Let's go, bro. Yeah, so I was surprised at how moderate they all came off, and it is interesting that they are talking about stuff like we want to fund the police and we want to put more cops on the street, and there was not one talk about Black Lives Matter or any of the cultural stuff. That's for sure, and it was all pretty straightforward. It was a lot of kitchen table politics. There wasn't one mention of like trans issues or I don't know. It was lacking of woke politics, and especially for Erica, who is the author of The Black Face of White Supremacy. I was surprised that she didn't inject more woke politics into it. And yeah, it's surprising for me for LA. And I'm keeping my eye on LA because I think it could be an indicator of maybe stuff to come in California if people are starting to move back towards the middle. But I won't hold my breath in places like LA. I think in other places you have a better chance of moving back towards the middle. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think maybe you're more hopeful than me. I thought it was too woke.
You thought it was too woke.
I was rolling my eyes left and right, honestly. I thought it was, I don't know. Maybe
I
I'm
think
getting
Kevin
too far
DeLeon.
to the other side. Kevin
Yeah, I
DeLeon,
think
for
Kevin
sure.
DeLeon was. I think if we were handing out awards, he definitely gets award for the most woke politician on the stage
Mhm.
because everything started off with, as the son of immigrant parents and Black, brown, Asian communities, and he always had to go into like every answer was prefaced with like something about minority community. So he was the most woke out of all of them. I think Karen Bass was. I think she's trying to walk back a lot of her issues of support for communist leaders, and she's been far left in the past. So I don't. And Caruso, we didn't get to any of his zingers, but he had some pretty good zingers. I liked his zingers. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to be clear that like I understand race is an issue and all of that. I'm not saying it's not, but I just don't think it should be at the forefront of a mayoral debate, let alone a race. Because there's people like me who get left out of just, I think it was Fear who brings up later in the debate that the average median income for a white family in Los Angeles, or not income, but wealth is apparently $350,000. And the average median wealth for a Black family is apparently $4,000. I don't know whether that's true. That's a problem if it is true, but it just doesn't speak to the actual like average Angelino. And it just makes you kind of cringe a little bit to hear all this talk about diversity and, we need to make affordable housing, but then we're going to do a vax mandate again, maybe. And then white families are this. It just speak to the issues is my opinion. I wouldn't be sitting here if these people ever did, but they don't.
They also asked them at the end. They all asked them like one like rapid fire like silly question. We're gonna be silly now. We're gonna have some fun. They asked him at the end like a rapid one fire question. They asked Mike for who was his favorite athlete, and he said Mike Trout. And I was like, Mike Trout doesn't play for an LA team. He plays for the Anaheim Angels.
Oh, okay.
I don't think people. I don't because they call. It's the funny thing is if you're a baseball fan, they call them the Los Angeles Angels, even though they play in Anaheim.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right
Not when
across the
I was
street
a kid. When I was a kid, they were the Anaheim Angels.
Yeah, now they're back. They've gone from like Angels to the Anaheim Angels to the Los Angeles Angels. So I don't know why they're called the Los Angeles Angels. They're not in LA. They're the Anaheim Angels. But there was a whole bunch of rapid fire questions that were kind of silly at the end. Like Buscaino, they asked him, where would you go if you took a tourist from out of town? It's their first time in LA. And he said the San Pedro Fish Market. And I was like, really? That's out of all the places in LA, you'd take them to a fish market. Okay. I whatever. But it was something. So I'm glad. Thank you everyone for tuning in to listen to us talk about the LA mayoral race. If there's any more debates we like to tune into, I'm sure there'll be gubernatorial debates down the line. And yeah, we'll cover those as well. So thank you, Natalie, for coming on and providing your your unique perspective from behind enemy lines, as I like to say, in Los Angeles, as always,
Thank
because
you.
I mean, I don't know what it's like in San Diego. We're free. We got sunshine. There's no mask. Nobody's worried about vaccine mandates down here. It's a whole different world down here in San Diego, just a short 100 miles away from you.
Well, my assembly member just voted Barbara Freire Woman of the Year. So
Oh,
I don't know for what.
excellent.
I guess for LA or our district. I don't know. But that's how out of touch we are here. So
They
I'm
actually
just
have
glad
an
it's a
award
woman,
for.
though.
I was going to say they actually have an award for a Woman of the Year. That seems
Yeah.
kind of like that doesn't seem very sensitive to those who identify as woman.
Yep.
LA. But yeah, thank you for coming on again, and to everyone listening or watching. If you like this show, as always, make sure you share, like, review, subscribe, all that stuff that helps the podcast grow and let people know that what we're talking about. And hopefully we'll be back to normal next week with the Thursday 8 p.m. It's a crazy week, and I got to get running to a political event that's about an hour away with traffic here in San Diego County. So thank you again, Natalie, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
And everyone else, have a great night. Later.